Hello, welcome to this video. Thanks so much for tuning in and sharing this now moment with myself and with one another. If you haven't seen these videos before, welcome. Welcome back if you have. My intention is unity and oneness in the highest levels of love light. I just want to go into a little word space right now. I'm going to go back and share some of the creative writing that I've done that is, some might refer to it as channeled information. What I do is I just tune into a higher aspect of me, or a version of me that is in a space of acceptance and receiving and openness and expansion. And I just pull through some of the information that's available to all of us, but I just pull it through in such a way that's kind of a rhyme. And what has been described to me is that I do this because it creates a frequency. And this frequency could be considered a code. And if you think of what a code is, or a code on, right? Or if we think of something where we're getting downloads or activations, all of those words have similar meanings in the tree of language, linguistics, vibration, and sound. So essentially, a lot of what I write is encoded to activate a certain frequency within the body, the mind, the imagination, the image at the ionic level, the imagination, right, of ourselves. So I'm just going to kind of go right into it. So thank you for tuning in. This writing that I did, I'm going to share on my blog post. It's going to be called, I've already shared part of it on Instagram on Keep It Simple Starseeds, called Smell the Song. Smell the Song. When I had cranial sacral done years ago, it activated something within. And I want to just talk briefly about that. Oftentimes I'll talk about us doing the work. The work is actually many different things. And sometimes that work consists of not just meditation, not just breath work or movement, not just being aware and recognizing what's going on around us and being in tune with our bodies and our environment and all of the synchronicities that are showing up for us. Those are all pieces of the whole pie, which I'll talk about in just a minute. But it's also body work, massage, cranial sacral therapy, light therapy, whatever it is that helps to stimulate a deeper opening. And so for me, cranial sacral therapy was a huge portion of my assistance, I guess, in awakening what was already within. And I had found out about cranial sacral therapy because of Andrew Bartzis. So I'm going to just give a little shout out and a thank you to him for being an integral part of my journey. And there's so many other people who have been an integral, so many words on that: integrity, integral, integer, a number in the geometry that maps out our frequency, that connects to the all, to the whole, the integral. So the integral, the grail, the holy grail, the cup that runneth over. So without further ado, bottom line is I smelled the color of orange. It didn't smell like oranges. I felt it. I sensed it. It was beyond seeing a particular color. I knew what orange felt like when I was having this experience. And it was strange and fascinating. And that led me into many different places and journeys in this hopping down the bunny trail, rabbit hole, down the rabbit hole experience, right? Follow the white rabbit. So we're going to follow the white rabbit with some of the things that I've written. And what I learned was a lot of the things that I was writing were, again, activations to light up the synapses in the brain, whether it be my brain or whoever's listening or reading my work. That's what I was guided to share with everybody else. So this particular one is called Smell the Song. And I'm just going to kind of share the screen here. And you guys can also just follow and skip all of this if you just want to read it on my blog post on carrieyvonne.com. Carrie, Yvonne. The link is in the page. And I also wrote part of this on Keep It Simple Star Seeds, if that's something that you'd like to follow on there. In the meantime, what I'm just going to do is hit share screen. Please excuse all of the misspellings because I haven't corrected it all. And I'm going to pause and stop in and out, so you can always skip to the end if you just want to get the short version. But reading it does do something to the brain for some of those that are open to it. So I'm just going to pause for just a moment, and I'm going to hit share screen. All right, so now I'm sharing screen. Smell the song. Let us recap on the energies flowing in. So I'm going to read the whole thing, and then I'm going to go back and break it down a little bit. So actually, I might share the screen afterwards because it can be a little distracting sometimes. So I'm just going to read it, and I invite you just to listen, and then I'll go back in and break down the wording. Let us recap on the energies flowing in. Let us put our thinking caps on and feel into the field. Let us capitalize on certain italics. Let us realize what we are, comparatively, creatively, expressing, waking up from, in form, in this human domain. Let us rest assured in the assurances, for we have moved into an entire new way of being, of responsibilities, abilities, blowing all the other realms, belowing, bowing, wing. We have existed within into oblivion. So blowing all the other realms, we have existed within into oblivion, oblivion. Out of body, I live in the ions, above and beyond. We are above and within, beyond all things. Let us certify this context and not construe the heart-held capacity this offers. We open into this contextual exchange, for it allows you to communicate within your land-based technology in such a way that it unlocks frequency calibrations subsets, click, 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 that you otherwise often forget to turn on, to tune into. For in these musings, musical sing-song way of writing, you are able to harness fuller potentials in the field, in the grid them into being. By being present, you write with feeling, and this allows us to free up energy and a host of other things. For in this ability, capability, compatibility to smell the song pulls through a light particle exchange that hosts other frequency ports. It allows a cascade of harmonics, otherwise unnoticed, in a grand scalar like waves and music, a grand scheme, attic of things. It moves out of one scale and up into another, weaving and opening many different alchemical laid number patterns. I'm seeing a play on words here, so I just have to pause for just a moment. Or maybe I won't. Yes, I will. Laced laid number patterns and sequential reference point, ... connecting into a higher charge, port, schematic, chematic. So I did a little thing here. I did this on my video, and this is part 2. Let us plug in for a moment to the final chapter, if you will. In a long played out storyboard, for many grow bored with the story that plays a sorrowful chord. We speak of a frequency band that is tethered to an old accord, an old accordance, accordion file, chock full of accelerated frequency ports. that no longer trident, decomposing rectangles, and patterns that disrupt the sensory output, sensory economics, the many different agreements that were once made. The plans well laid and are now put out to pasture, laid to rest. For the rest of us are the ones that have come to move through this seemingly unsurmountable, sizable amount of sludge, taking out the trash, take out the papers and the trash. We must hold each other. I was hearing, take out the papers and the trash. We must hold each other accountable by holding ourselves accountable. Accounts payable, able to account for the new ocean grids that are now being laid out as we speak. What do we speak of? Documents frozen in time, pieces of the whole, 8. Pie, pieces of the whole pie. Let us rework the numbers and create more patterns of understanding. Script, scribble, into. Let us describe the wild ride that we are ready to partake in, embark on. So funny, as I see partake, I see partaki, like shiitake mushrooms. Fringe benefits on the fringe. Let us allow the scope of the magnetism of the events about to unfold to interlace with our ability to embolden, and embark into a bold new world, away from old concubines. We must say the human is the defining moment, the defining movement, the chosen one. For we are all children of the light, night and day, merged into one. Let us seize this day, brothers and sisters, and be bold in our choice points, boldly going where no man has gone before. For before the light was shadowed by night, but now the two are seen side by side, merged into a pattern unification. This can be disorienting and distorting. This can be disorienting at first, disorientating, and many say senseless. But we are being invited to use our senses and merge in this way so that all can be absorbed into the full light spectrum, specter. Your will is divine alchemy. Stay on the trajectory of the heart, a mapped kingdom of delight. Stay well on track. This is all a play on words, you guys. Opening to the playing fields, the tracks, the musical accordances that are now accessing your fields. Feel into the streamers and plasma projections that are falling all around you. I was writing, I saw stars falling all around your head. For you are the ground crew, grounding this into your reality. You are not alone. You are cherished beyond words, beyond the confounds of this earth, yet earthbound. Earth is bound to you, she to you, and you to her. Boots on the ground. A well-stocked arsenal is within you. Your grab. Reach within. Around and around we go. There is no stopping this flow. It is inevitable. And oh, how the tables have turned. See that all is fallen at your feet, beneath your toes, twinkle toes. Okay, so that's the writing. I'm going to share screen now. We're going to play. Not that we aren't already. How do I share screen? There we go. kind of thought I forgot that I stopped sharing screen. All right, here we go. So let's go back to the beginning. Let us recap on the energies flowing in. Let us put our thinking caps on and feel in to the field. Just gonna pause for a moment there. This right there is, we're going back and we're going into the cap, which is the crown. Put our crown on. All right, we are the kings and queens of our domain. Let us capitalize on. So we're putting our thinking caps on, but it's also going back into recapitulation, review, renew, okay? And feel into the field. The field is essentially the womb that we are part of. If you think of our reality or the air that is around us, the aether, which I know is separate from air, but it's an energy and a frequency, a domain, if you will, that we exist within. We could call it the matrix, we could call it whatever we want, but it connects us to all things. So we're being invited to not only think about this, but to look back on, to add our crown, become the leaders of sovereignty, and feel into the entire field that we exist within. And if I just pause for a moment and look at, oops, I'm trying to actually pause the recording. I'll get this right one of these days. Okay. So I was guided to go look up capitalize, and I'm on Google, obviously. And if you look at capitalize, I don't know if this is too big, but it's the most important city of a town, country, or region, the capital. The place associated more than any other with a specified activity or product. It talks about wealth, okay? It talks about assets over liabilities. A people who possess wealth and use it to control a society's economic activity collectively. A valuable resource. And then, of course, a letter, okay, which I thought was the size and form used to begin sentences and names. I liked also the letter of an alphabet, large in size. Oh, I already said that. Used to express approval, satisfaction, or delight. All right, so if I go back to this, there's a lot of plays on words of this. Let us capitalize on certain italics. Oh my goodness, this could take me into a whole other spin. Bottom line is, what is a capital? It's a center. It's the beginning. It's a value, okay? And so there's certain things that we're being invited to go in bold about and be bold. I'm going to pause just for a moment. So one of the things I like to play with here is, so I do a lot with etymology, but at the same time, it's not all etymology. It's an energy and a frequency that certain words are based out of. So if I go into here and it says, let us capitalize on certain italics, let us realize what we are. And of course, I put that in capitals, what we are. And if we go back to capital, I love the fact that it talks about the human capital. And it says a valuable resource of a particular kind. Let us recognize that we are that. I also like the fact that it says it emphasizes certain words or phrases, but it also is a cursive style that leans at an angle. Why lean at an angle, right? So if I play with this and I really kind of go, okay, well, what else is there? Okay, you guys, I just went down the rabbit hole. With this one word, okay. So let us put our thinking caps on and feel into the field. Let us capitalize on certain italics. So if I just say that one sentence, let us capitalize on certain slants to the right, on certain curvatures, on certain angles. And when we capitalize on something, it isn't just about really getting value in it, but that is part of it. We're gaining something from it. We're capitalizing from it. So there's a lot of angles here to just these two it's not even a sentence, right? These 6 words. And let us realize what we are. Okay, now if I play with this, and I continued to say comparatively, creatively. So what are we comparatively? What are we comparing ourselves to? What are we comparing ourselves comparatively? Like that's a play on words. And what we are creatively. And when I wrote creatively, I was drawn to write IV. Okay. Now and I'm just going to go backwards just for a moment. Play with me will you, in this little language play for just a moment? Because if you go into italics, I found this fascinating. It's talking about, you're underlining the word, okay? If you're underlining the word, now this, you guys, all has to do with mathematics. I don't know what it has to do with mathematics, but I do know that it has to do with mathematics and geometry. So maybe some of y'all out there have more knowledge about this than I do. I'm sure many of you do. But having said that, it's talking about the words in which they are stressed when you're quoting. It's a cursive font. It has a flow to it. It goes to the right. It leans to the right. And if we look at a right angle, which I'm going to go to in just a moment, we'll come back to this. But I have a tendency to go to certain words that I'm drawn to for a reason. And so I love the word swashes. And I laugh about this because later in what I wrote something having to do with a pirate. And I don't know why, but now I'm seeing this as swashbuckling. So what's happened is it's reminded me to bring it all together. So if I go on to swashes, this is what comes up. Let's click on this, shall we? It's a typographical flourish, such as an exaggerated serif. It dates back to the 16th century. This was dated back to 1522, the La Operina. Now, what I found fascinating is when I went to this, it's used in this addition to Calvin. Ooh, I love it. He was a theologian. I love to play with those words, even though I never really pronounce them 100% right. It talks about God's sovereignty. Okay. Wow. Okay, so I'm just going to pause for a moment because now I can't find what it came up. So I was guided as I was doing this to go to underscore. And the reason is, as I'm looking at this talks about the italic. I've written about underscores so much in my writing, and I'm not a musician in any way, shape, or form. But essentially, the italic has to do with underlining. And underlining is also an underscore, which has to do with music. Now, this talks about accenting someone or something, creating this emphasis on it. But if you go to an underscore in music, it's a music that's when there's no dialogue. So I see an underscore accompanies the action in a performance. Oh boy, I could go into so many different places here. So, okay. You guys, I'm so far down the rabbit hole right now, I can't even tell you. So I write about underscores all the time. And essentially, the italic is an emphasis on. If I go to italics, it goes to underline. It's the print equivalent of underlining. And then I also was like, all right, it's a low line or a dash, which means something. Now, if I was guided to go into what does that mean in mathematics, because I constantly write about how our mathematics are changing, change the math, look at the score, look at the writing. The writing is all an angle. It's a certain angle in mathematics. So what are we? Well, we're sound in form, we're vibration and frequency. So when I clicked on underscore, it took me to vinculum. I don't even know if I'm saying that right, but it's a system of mathematical objects and ideas. It talks about, it's a fetter, a chain, a tie, oh, a tether. Oh, how funny. Doesn't fetter, chain, and tie, if you were to put that all together, kind of sound like tether? You guys, this is what's so fun about this. So it's a horizontal line used for various purposes. It may be placed in an overline or underline to indicate that the expression is to be considered grouped together. I'm pretty sure if I continue down that rabbit hole, I'll go into a completely different spin. But I was also guided to go back into underlining and talk about when I go to swashes, the swashbuckling. There was this La Operina, and it's talking about they can be seen, and this is the example that they use, that it dates back to the 16th century. So when I clicked on La Operina, because I thought, well, that's beautiful, there was a picture. Is that what it was? Oh, there's more of these there. Institutive. Wow. All right, I'm not going to go quite down that rabbit hole because I totally could, but that's not the picture I was looking for. So let me just pause this and get back on track here. I'm laughing because I got so far down the rabbit trail that it took me to a different page, but I just had to scroll down. So if I scroll down, what I found fascinating that was on this page is this beautiful Catherine of Siena, and it's called Letters. And it has this table. Whew, wow, that looks intense. But it's talking about in September 1500, in which appear the first words ever printed in italics. Inside the heart in the left hand, inside the book in the right hand. Oh, I see this so symbolic. Look at that picture. Wow. Okay. So I could go into so many different layers with that, but I'm not. But I do see that there are some symbolics here to play with. So this is talking about what we are. And when I just look at that picture, I see the heart and the word was one, right? So let us capitalize on certain italics. Let us realize what we are. We are the heart, the first thing that develops in the body, and we are the word. And we are part of that word, and the word was one. Comparatively and creatively, IV, okay? Expressing, waking up from, in form. So we're waking up from the word, in form, in this human domain. Now, if I go into domain, that has to do with the domain, our rulership also has to do with our crown. But if you think of a domain as a landing place, it's a home base, right? And it's an area. Let us rest assured in the assurances. Even this was a play on word. If I talk about let us rest assured, why do we say that? What does that even have to do? And this goes into the etymology of things. And I'm not even going to go that crazy with this because that could take a whole other video. Let us rest assured in the assurances. So that's kind of a double, right? A double, it cancels each other out, but it really doesn't. Because when we rest assured, if I look up that on etymology, it talks about giving confidence. Let us make secure. Let us bind by a pledge. Let us give a promise to protect something, safe and secure, calm. Okay. I just see this having so many different layers here. So let us rest assured in the assurances. For we have moved into a new way of being. And I'm going to skip that because I could spend an entire video just on that. Maybe I will. For we have moved into an entirely new way of being, of responsibility. So for me, being and abilities are very obviously tuned into each other. Our ability to respond, blowing all the other realms we have existed within into oblivion. So let's play it with that a little bit. So we've moved into an entire new way of being, of responsibility, abilities, blowing all the other realms we've existed within into oblivion. Now, you guys, I haven't even gone back into the underscore. So I'm going to have to go back and really break those words down a little bit, because essentially what I'm being shown in this particular writing is, look, this is mathematical. So if you go back and look at the underscores and see how everything's connected, it's actually a message behind the message. But so it's true. Our responsibilities have shifted. Our ability to respond to things have shifted. How we respond to things have shifted. We've moved into an entire new way of being because we're in a completely different framework. And let us be in stability with that. Let us rest assured. Let us feel safe and secure. Let us create a bind here in the binds that we have created. Okay, in the pledges that we have created. And this blows out all the other realms. And when I wrote blowing, that was a big play on words. below wing, blowing out all the other realms. So I was seeing this bow of energy bowing out, okay? And we're expanding it out into this bow, and we're bowing out from this other realm and essentially leaving that behind from one perspective by moving through it, okay? And I don't remember why I put a bird. Oh, because of the wing, hello. But it's ironic that it was a cardinal that came up here. That looks like a cardinal. So when I put a bird in there, the cardinal has to do with all four directions. So when I look back at this and I see we're bowing out in this circle, so everything is going bigger. The future, the parallels, the past, and above and below. And essentially this has to do with jet, a Boeing, a plane. It's a plane of existence. It's a plane that we are on, okay? We're expanding out that plane and we're flying with our wings in full expansion. It has to do with us also activating our wings. That's a whole other video. But we actually have energy that bows out from the back of our body and the front of our body, that expands out the auric field from one perspective and is an actual technology interface with our human bodies. But it's blowing all the other realms. So what happens when wind blows? It touches everything. Okay, it's not just felt, it can go through things and around things. And also, as above, so below. This means we're also expanding out the realms that are underneath us. Because when we make a change in the currency, in the value, in the current, in the flow, in the wind, by us being who we are, we ripple out backwards, forwards, sideways, and we affect everything within our bowing, within our time stream, within our flight stream, okay? And that also has to do with what's below us. Also, this has something to do with the B note in music harmonics. So that's something else I'll have to play with here, but I don't have to, but why not? So let's play with that for a moment, shall we? Bowing. Now, if I look up the etymology of blow, right, when you're blowing wind, it's essentially to swell. The European root shared by flare, okay? It talks about to swell. And it shows all these different, to inflate, breathe, sound. So funny where this all came from. By blow. Oh my goodness. Blow by blow. So there's so many different, a blow struck to the side or from side in sword play. Oh, there's so many different. I love the fact that wobble is part of it. How you guys talked about the wobble on the earth, right? So bellows, I've written about bellows. Move air, produce a current of air, inflate, a wind instrument, okay? To carry by wind or current or air. Some other things in here. To bloom, to put forth flowers or to blossom, to thrive or to bloom, a hard hit. So these are all originals, okay? We'll skip that one. But so if we go into this, I was seeing that essentially we're rippling out into these frequencies. And this has to do with a swelling that is happening. And I've talked about this before. It's like we're bowing out and pushing. And think about what's been going on with the sun, you guys. The sun has all of these solar flares. The flare. So we're flaring up all the realms because of what we're doing here on Earth now. And so we're doing this to all the other realms that we have existed within. Because as above, so below, as within, so without. Okay? And that's a whole play on words too. And we're doing this, we're blowing it all into oblivion. Now, when I wrote oblivion, I see that as out of body, living at the ionic level. So even though we're in this body, we haven't always existed within this body. And so we're changing not only what's going on within our bodies, but what's happening outside of our bodies at the ionic level, which I hear subatomic, and I could go into so many different things. But let's talk a little bit about oblivion. So I always thought oblivion was just to stop, like it's gone. Poof, it's gone into oblivion. Well, where is that? Well, oblivion isn't necessarily in our bodies. And so some of us are having an out-of-body experience in our bodies. And I know some of you guys watching this know what I'm talking about. But we're blowing out all the other realms we have existed within into oblivion. If I go into oblivion, it's saying forgetfulness, loss of memory. So we're kind of forgetting about these, put out of mind, okay? And essentially, I'd like to go forgetfulness, oblivio. Whew. It's fun to play with this, to forget about it. But I like this. We're evening out, perhaps originally even out, smoothing over. To be smoothed, rubbed smooth or ground down. So I do think it's a little deeper than just forgetting. So we're blowing all these other realms and we're smoothing it out from one perspective. Above and beyond, again, bowing it out, above and beyond all things. Let us certify this context and not construe the heart-held capacity this offers. I always have to laugh because every time I go deeper, I'm like, oh, wait a minute, I missed this. So we have existed, we're blowing out all the other realms that we have existed within into oblivion. And if I go into OB, just to check this out, it has to do with toward, against, before or near, in the direction of. So I was seeing that we're living in the direction of, to up close upon, toward. So this is all these, oh, I love that. So it basically, we're moving, we're blowing out all the other realms into oblivion, yet we're going towards it as well. You guys, this is fun. So it's not, we're not forgetting it though. But we are, but we're moving closer to it. So what I see this meaning as is we've forgotten, okay? But we're moving more towards back what we have forgotten. And in doing that, we're starting to let go of whatever it has been that we are not. And when I see a cardinal to me represents something that has passed on. More and more people that have, you know, basically seen, had a loved one passed on. How often do you hear about that? Oh, a cardinal came to visit me. They're representatives. They're aviators. They're of the air. They're red. They're root. They have to do with beyond in the other realms, out of body, okay, an NDE. So essentially the cardinal has to do with that. And so we are winging out to that. We are moving back to, we're forgetting what it was that we're forgetting these other things that aren't relevant to us. And in that we're remembering more. I'm just seeing this as such a contradiction, but at the same time, it's again, not. Oh, okay. Let us certify this context and not construe the heart-held capacity this offers. All right. So if I go into this certify, this heart-held capacity this offers, we're declaring the truth that what this heart-held capacity, our ability to hold, what does this offer for us? We're directing, we're designating it in form, okay? And we're essentially certifying this context. What is the context? What do you do when you take it out of context? Well, it comes from coming together and we're weaving through the heart. Okay? Everything's connected. The parts of a writing or discourse that are directly connected. Let us certify this context. Not construe the heart-held capacity this offers. Just that one paragraph. I'm laughing about those. The funny part about this part that I wrote is I was playing with construe, and it's not the etymology of it. It's what isn't true. What do you do when you con out of something? It's not true. We're conning ourselves out of the truth, right? Let us not construe. It's construe. Let us not throw it away. That was a play on words, not necessarily the etymology of it. So if we certify this and not construe the heart-held capacity this offers. So if I look at construe, it basically means interpret in a particular way. So don't interpret this in the old way, okay, that's in oblivion. Don't interpret this in the forgetfulness way. Let us not misinterpret or put it into, okay, let's not misinterpret it. Essentially, we're maybe interpreting some of this in a particular way, but that isn't exactly the way that it is. That is the way that it is based on what we don't remember. And it's also sharing to look above and beyond this. And this is a heart-held capacity. So a capacity, if we go into that, but basically context also has to do with words and meanings and what's held within it. The juice, right? Context. Connected to, right? Let's not misinterpret what this is connected to. I also thought this was interesting because Strew had to do with talked about Aveston, star, to spread out and to stretch out, to extend. Talked about straw, which brings me back into weaving. Plane brought me into plane of existence and domain. So that was the certify, right? And the context, construe. Whoo. And then this takes me back to that sign of that book in italics, holding the heart in one hand and the book in the other. The heart-held capacity that this book offers, right? We are above and within. All right, so I missed a little bit there, but boy, oh boy, we open into this contextual exchange. Again, if I go into context, it's a word exchange. It has a certain vibration and frequency with it, and it's an exchange of information, okay? For it allows you, this was a play on words, because I was guided to just say the letter U. So it allows the letter and whatever vibration U holds in the alphabet, which if I just play with this a little bit and kind of check out U, I was guided to look up number one, it's 21 in the alphabet. For it allows U, 21, which has a lot of symbology attached with it, but it also has to do with the 3, okay, U as being the mother, the father, and the child, okay? But also, if you look at it in mathematics, it represents the union of 2 sets. The union is the set of all elements included in either or both sets. So we open into this contextual exchange, for it allows you, 21, and the union of 2 sets, this combination of dark and light, of black and white, of male and female, of above and below, of within and without, okay, of all of the elements included in both of those, okay, to communicate within our, your, you, Y, O, U, R. So if I look at Y, I see of that as chromosomes, and yours is ours. Again, the 2. you and me, right? You and we, me and we. For it allows you to communicate within your land-based technology. And I talk about that, of course, Earth. It allows us to communicate within Earth, but it also allows us to communicate within our skin suit. This is our land-based technology in such a way that it unlocks frequency calibration subsets, click, 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 that you otherwise often forget. And I was just talking about that, like the forgetfulness. We're coming back to the wholeness that we've forgotten, coming back into the unification of the two. So if I play with this for a moment, so if I go into this land-based technology, it unlocks frequency calibrations. And a calibration essentially is a measurement in technology and metrology. I'm never necessarily saying that right. It talks about accuracy, gathering quantity to be measured, such as voltage, a sound tone, or a physical artifact. This isn't what I was looking for, but it says it means, strictly speaking, the term calibration means the act of comparison. So again, the beginning of what I wrote about was compare and contrast, or maybe I wrote about that later on. But essentially, we're calibrating, we're comparing, we're measuring. The comparison of measurement values derived under a test. So that's interesting. We're ongoing a test, right? And frequency, I always just like to share what that is because that can mean many different things. But what it says in definition is the rate at which something occurs or is repeated over a particular period of time, or the rate at which a vibration occurs that constitutes a wave, either in a material, as in sound waves, or an electromagnetic field, as in radio waves. So this unlocks frequency calibration. So the waves and the sound waves and the vibration, right? And the balance or the measurement of when that happens, how it happens, etc. And I also wrote frequency calibration subsets. And I love looking at subsets. So let's look at that briefly. Because look at the subset. If you look over here, it's my bubbles. It's a bubble within a bubble, frequency subset, okay? In mathematics, A is a subset of a set B if all elements of A are also elements of B. So we're talking about that in here, right? Contextual exchange, communicate within, in, I, your, Y, O, U, R, you, right? It's all together. It's coming back into oneness, right? And it unlocks these frequency calibration, okay, measurements and accuracy, okay, subsets. It unlocks the bubbles within the bubbles. Click, 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 like a combination lock. Also, it reminds me of Dorothy from The Wizard of Oz. Click the heels together 3 times. Click, 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 right? That you otherwise forget, often forget. So we forget them often. It doesn't mean we always forget them, but we forget about it a lot. That we forget to turn on this thing. We don't tune into it. For in these musings, musical sing-song way of writing, you are able to harness fuller potentials in the field. So I spelled that wrong, but I still like, right, I put file, because I talk about the accordion in a bit, in the grid, and we grid them into being by being present. You write with feeling. So I'm writing and I'm feeling this as I write. This is grounding it and gridding it as me, as a human grid nodal point in the living light grid that is connected to Mother Earth, Gaia, and the field that we all exist within. Okay, I'm being present with this, which allows me to harness fuller potentials within that field, within me, right? And that then makes it part of, activates, but also connects to the node points and the portals that we are all a part of, okay? And the feeling is the heart-centered coherence. It is the heart-centered coherence and collaboration. It's the calibration of the heart. This allows us to free up, to move up energy and a host of other things. Well, what happens when you host something, right? The host of hosts, isn't that in the Bible? Let's play with that for a moment. Let's. Okay, so we could go with this, we could go with this. We could see it as shadow or we could see it as light. So I'm writing with feeling and it allows me to free up, to free and expand out energy and a host of other things. So I also write in this writing an arsenal. Now, if I look up a host of hosts from the Bible, it talks about having angelic forces at his command, Jehovah or God. But I see the angelic as angles, as words and letters. So essentially, I'm hosting and using letters and geometry to free up energy and a host of other things. So I'm hosting as you would as a house guest, right? Or excuse me, as having a guest in your house. So it's a host or having a party and being the host of the party. Here you go, check out this, look at that. But it's also a host of other things. For in this ability, capability, and I guess I was going to go into host a little bit here. Hospitality. It's yeah, guest master. I think that's so interesting that if you look at that, look at ghost. From the roots, ghost. And I was talking about out-of-body experience, which reminds me of near-death experience. Talks about a multitude. It talks about an army. But I also love this because it talks about a body of Christ, consecrated bread, a host of other things, to serve as a host. The word ghost, ooh, this is so fun. Mutual exchange relationship. Isn't that funny? So I'll have to play with this a little bit. This is fascinating to me. I love it. Powerful Lord. So essentially, by us playing with the angles of the letters and the words, it allows us to be the host of hosts and create all angles and spins, right, into power. For in this ability, capability, compatibility, that's a whole play on words. As I say that, I see cap ability, using my head, putting my thinking cap on, being sovereign, the crown, right? In compatibility, I hear compatibility where the bat, the brain, the bat cave, and being able to match up, to smell the song. So it's using all of the senses, okay, to hear and play the song, to recognize the sound behind the sound, the frequency, the harmonics, the vibration. This pulls through a light particle exchange. To pull means to draw in, but it's also so many other plays on words, but I'm just going to sit with that. That hosts other frequency ports. So this is a big theme here. By being present, you write with feeling, and this allows us to free up. So when we have this feeling, I got a feeling, energy, and a host of other things. For in this ability, capability, compatibility to smell the song, it pulls through a light particle exchange that hosts other frequency ports. So all of a sudden, we're allowed to tune into other frequencies that we may not have felt or we may have forgotten because we weren't using all of our senses to smell the song, the sound, feel it. It allows a cascade of harmonics, otherwise unnoticed, in a grand scale, scalar, a grand scheme, schematic of things. So a thing, right? I always hear Stranger Things. It's like a thing. It's a creation. It's perhaps material, but not material, right? It becomes something. So if I go back to this, we're hosting other frequency ports. We're porting up. What do you do when you plug into something? What does a ship do when it comes into a port, right? It unloads and it loads. It's a place in order to access other things. I hear potential. We're exchanging light particles and codes, okay? And I just want to play with this briefly, and I'm actually going to end on this. We'll do part 2 in another video. And so for me, I see that this allows a cascade of harmonics. So a cascade in general is talking about a process whereby something, typically information or knowledge, is successively passed on. It also talks about water. And water, if you know, is a living substance. It holds memory. It holds a lot of things. But it's also a series of musical notes, a series of events which follow each other rapidly, each of which triggers the next. So we could really play with that. It talks about harmonics, and I could go a little deeper into that. But it creates this cascade of harmonics that otherwise would go unnoticed in a grand scale. And scalar waves, I think Dan Winter says something about them being, Dan Winter says that it's not called scalar. He calls it that it's not actually a scalar wave. But let's talk about that briefly. I think he's basically saying that it's coherence. It's implosion. There's another word that he uses for it. Sorry, Dan, I'm really letting you down on this one. But I'm just going to show you what the typical theme is, and you could at least have a visual. Okay. So it allows a cascade of harmonics, otherwise unnoticed, in a grand scalar waves, a grand schematic of things. So I'm just going to end on this note, on this last little bit. But essentially, if you look up scalar waves, I think he calls it negentropic instead of scalar. And for whatever reason, he says it's incorrect. But if you go to negentropic, I'm on fractalfield.com, and I'll share all of these links with you. But if you look at this picture right here, if I can make it any bigger, I don't know if I can. He has a whole set, and this is what it's referring to, okay? It's these scalar waves, and I have to show you, look at these angles, okay? He has a whole section here on the golden ratio, scalar waves, negentropic, the holy grail. And this talks about implosion and fusion. So essentially, if you go back to what we're talking about, we're creating this bigger implosion, okay, in the toroidal spin of things. And we're interacting with the field and the sound in such a way that we're allowing this cascade that we wouldn't usually notice. But it's massive. It's a grand scale. Okay, it's weights and measures. It's Libra. It's a balancing. It's a musical scale. It's a longitudinal wave, right? It's an array, okay? And it moves out of one scale, so up into a higher scale, okay? Weaving and opening, it goes from one up into another. We might call this dimensions, okay? Weaving and opening many different alchemical laced number patterns and sequential reference point, ... So I'm playing with that because if you look at a sequential reference point and you use a dot to intersect things, if you look at the dots on a crystal lattice, if you look at what a ... goes, it's to be continued. It's on and on and on. It's to connect something, right? It's like keep going, ... right? But it's also the ... means many different things. I'm hearing doe, a deer, a female deer. It's like that pattern, right? Do. Connects us to a higher charge, a port, a schematic, chematic. And again, chemistry, right? It's shematic. This turn puts us into a higher sequential reference point. So when we reference something, we go back to it. right? We use it as a schematic. We use it as a point, a reference point on a map. We connect the dots. This dot over here connects to this dot over here, right? This dimensional dot connects into this higher dimensional dot, and it pulls together this cascade of harmonics, allowing us to create a broader bandwidth by us playing with this. Oh, I'm done. Okay, I guess that's it. Oh no, that was only the first part. So I'm going to end on that note, and then I'm going to continue with the next section because there's so much more. Basically, I'm talking about us creating a new story. We're dipping into a higher frequency band. And when we dip into this higher frequency band, it allows us to band together to be the dot, dot, dots that connect the dot, dot, dots that then essentially allow a higher schematic, a broader schematic. And I go into the second portion of this writing talking about the fact that this also applies to Earth. So I keep getting these messages that there's different points and spaces on the Earth that are not what we thought they were. So the Earth goes deeper than we thought, it goes higher than we thought, and it goes broader than we thought. So it's this bow. And if you think of a toroidal field, that toroidal field, from my perspective, is expanding. We are expanding. Or we could say it's expanding out and deepening with a higher frequency domain, a higher home base, a higher vibration. I'm hearing a higher landmark, a higher watermark. And this has something to do with water, with the oceans, with the land. We've got more land than we realize, than we've been told, just from what I'm tuning into, you guys. So I don't know all the answers to that, but it's fun to expand my awareness out into these fields, because then I see here our different, I recognize certain patterns that are awakening within me and that are awakening within others, and that we are all activating within the field. The more we tune into different ways of communication, I'm hearing different ports of communication. So if you think of a port when you landed a ship, what happens back in the ancient days? You would exchange information. You would learn about new things. You would talk about your travels. You would exchange goods. You would make friends, and then you would move on and take that with you someplace else. It was also sometimes a place of safety, of putting your roots down, you know? So recognizing that this is expanding as well. And the more open we can be to this knowledge, and the less rigid we are about, well, that's not real, or you're wrong. Although there are some people who are, what I'm hearing, are touting beliefs that really aren't true, or they're only, better spoken, partially true. So it's not that we don't necessarily believe in certain foundational concepts and beliefs, but we're being invited to be open to, but wait, there's more, dot, 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 to be continued. Because we are continuing out into this realm where no man has ever been before, from this perspective, as we are now, right? And we are tapping into these higher aspects of ourselves, future versions of ourselves, therefore changing all versions of ourselves. And when we are playful with our energies, the more boundless we become in how expansive our communication can be. And guess what it all boils down to? The heart. So have fun, you guys. We're being invited to be in a spaciousness of love and light and appreciation, non-judgment, balance, right? Peace in sovereignty, and, you know, non-projection, while at the same time projecting our own imagination, imagining out, but at the same time not pushing it on someone else who is also in their own process of communication and imagining with their own processes, yet at the same time finding the way to communicate with each other to create a more stable yet fluid schematic, architecture, storyboard. And this is what's going to take me into part 2 of the video when I talk about changes on the earth and the storyboard. So I invite you guys to join me in that particular video down the road. So in love and light, to be continued. Namaste. Thanks for playing, guys.